Hey friend, welcome into another episode of the Meant to Bloom podcast. I am your host, Brittany Clarkson, and I am so glad you are here with me. Okay. Where's my cursor? There we go. Trying to read my notes. All right, we're going to try and stay on topic today. I am highly distracted right now because it is snowing outside. The temperature says it's only like 40 degrees, and we just had a hailstorm. And now it is just flurries of snow coming in multiple directions. And I'm supposed to leave the house tonight to teach dance, so hopefully it doesn't keep up and road conditions stay clear for me. So, anyways, I will try not to be distracted by that. Hey, cat, you don't need to lick yourself on camera. Don't be gross. Tilly. Okay. I want to talk to you about something. I've been wanting to do this episode for a really long time. And I also want to keep it just kind of short and sweet at the same time because I feel like it doesn't need to be super long, but I do invite questions and comments and feedback because if you want me to dig deeper into any aspect of this episode or other episodes, honestly, I am so down for it. I just need the guidance from you to know like, hey, you need more of that? I'll give it to you. Let's do this. Okay. So I want to talk about how I stopped hating dinner because this was something that was really, really just a hiccup in my life. I dreaded making dinner every night. I had so much anxiety around the decision of what to make, and I put a lot of weight on the decisions. I put a lot of pressure on myself. And I know that a lot of you out there relate to this too. And maybe you just need the permission to let it be easy. Maybe you just need some ideas of how you can make it be easier. Maybe you just need that clarity of knowing how you've been overcomplicating this and how you've been raising the bar too high on this one. Okay. So, let's talk about this. I acknowledge that this is such a struggle for so many people. I know that I'm not alone in this. You are not alone in this. Dinner can feel like such a chore, especially when you're already exhausted. So here's part of the problem is that dinner time happens at the end of the day. You have already made thousands and thousands of decisions for the day. And when dinner rolls around and you haven't made the decisions of what's for dinner, you haven't already assessed what's in the kitchen, it's that walking in unprepared and exhausted already. You walk in, and if the kitchen's a mess, there's overstimulation happening right then, right there. It's almost like if you ever played Sims and they'd walk into a room that was dirty and there was, puddles on the floor and dishes stacked on the floor. And the Sim, that little bar of, their emotions would just get all thrown off. And it's suddenly, the way they feel about their environment is just plummeted. This happens to you too. That's based on real psychology. So yeah, I get that kind of visual in my head when I walk into the kitchen and it's messy and I'm just like, oh, my bar is at the ground now. So you do something about it, right? So some of it's just noticing that you need to do something about that. But here's the thing is if your kitchen's always messy and you have to clean up before you can cook, now it's two things. You have to clean the kitchen and you have to cook dinner. But also if you haven't prepared for dinner, you have to prepare for dinner, getting all of the ingredients together. And if you haven't decided what is for dinner, that's also a decision that you have to make of deciding what's for dinner. And what do you have to do before you decide what's for dinner? You have to know what's in the kitchen. You have to know what you have all of the ingredients for. So this can be super overwhelming, especially for us women with our spaghetti brains, because we're thinking about all the things at one time. And that gets overwhelming. And then if you have ADHD, you get this shutdown that occurs. And it's like, oh, it's too overwhelming. Now I can't do anything. And I will tell you, there have been times where having to prepare dinner has literally had me on the kitchen floor crying. And here is one thing that that really changed, it started the change of things for me, because this took a lot of mindset work. This took a lot of pattern changing. It took a lot. And like, I still know that this is sort of like a pattern response for me that I have to continue to overcome. But this one time I was in the kitchen crying because I was so stressed and so overwhelmed by it all. And I couldn't decide what to make for dinner. And my husband walks in on me because he came home from work, and he's like, why, an instant problem solver, right? Because that's what the man does. They walk in and they're like, oh, well, here, let me solve the problem. And he's like, well, why don't you just put the lasagna in the oven? There's a lasagna in the freezer. Why don't you just put that in the oven? And I'm like, what do you mean, why don't I just put that in the oven? That's too easy. That didn't involve any work for me. And that's when I realized that was part of the problem. That I thought I had to earn my value as a human. I thought that I had to like pull my weight around the house by making an elaborate meal that took a lot. Like, I thought dinner had to take a lot out of me. I thought dinner had to be difficult. It wasn't fair to everyone else in the house if I didn't put in enough work cooking dinner. That was what I realized was the thought that I had. And it was when I spoke that thought out loud to him that it was like, oh, this is not normal. This is not the way it's supposed to be. This is not a healthy thought pattern to be stuck in. This is a cognitive distortion. This is me making things more complicated than they need to be. Like, we don't need to do that. There's enough going on in life that we don't need to overcomplicate anything ever. Okay? So, that's when I realized it can be easy. And here's like the real caveat about that. I think caveats are, I don't know if that's the right word. I'm distracted by the snow again. I can't think of the word for it. So here's like the real thing about that situation of me crying in the lasagna is that it wasn't even like a Stouffer's lasagna. It was not a like, I didn't buy it from the freezer department. I cooked that lasagna. I cooked a double batch of lasagna 2 weeks or 3 weeks before, and I physically prepared this lasagna myself and put it in the freezer. Like, I did put in the work. And somehow in my head I was even like, well, I did that work weeks ago, so it doesn't count because I didn't do enough hard work today. So yeah, I hope that if you have any cognitive distortions in your life like this right now, that you are having your eyes open to that and you're realizing, oh, wow, I overcomplicated this. I expect way more of myself than I need to. Like, if you were at a friend's house and they had the same situation, what would your response be? Like, if you were solving the problem for someone else, how easy would you let them have it? You've got to give yourself that same amount of grace. You've got to let it be that easy. Okay? And so here's some other reasons why some people might not like cooking. Why dinner might be so hard for you. See, like, I legit didn't like cooking because I didn't know how to cook when I met my husband. I had just discovered Hamburger Helper, and I thought it was just the best thing ever because I was like, I can actually cook something. Like, I thought it was a huge flex that I could cook Kraft mac and cheese without looking at the box for instructions anymore. Like, that was my level of being able to cook. I could not cook frozen pizza. I'll let you know that one. It took me years to overcome the trauma of cooking frozen pizzas because I had done it wrong somehow so many times. Like, one time it caught on fire, and one time it like melted through the grates because it said don't cook it on a pan. So I put it directly in there and then it like melted through. I don't know how these things happened, but it had me like, I can't cook frozen pizza. That really got in my head. That was a real limiting belief for myself for a long time. I now can cook frozen pizza. Yay. Celebrate the wins, people. So yeah, maybe you just don't know what you're doing in the kitchen. Maybe you're used to reading recipes that are super complicated or like not written for your type of, brain. That is one thing I have discovered. is that different recipes written different ways can make it easier. So you might just be having decision fatigue. It might be the fact that you're not prepared at dinner time. So once it rolls around, you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. There's too many factors to think about. Like what meat's already thawed, what vegetables are going to go bad. Do we have buns to make burgers? Like, do we have the right kind of pasta to do this? Like, we get so in our heads about it. And it's like there's a million decisions involved in just deciding what to make for dinner. So many different things to think about. And yeah, decision fatigue, decision exhaustion, decision anxiety. These are all real things. And it's just the mental exhaustion that by the end of the day you might be facing. Maybe that's what is hanging you up about dinner. All right. And then there's the pressure to make healthy meals that everyone's willing to eat. Like, oh, it can be so tough. Seriously, invest in supplements. That's just the easiest thing to do. Invest in like a green veggie powder that you can hide in a smoothie or in chocolate pudding for your kids or something. Like, trick them into eating their vegetables if you have to, so that you don't have to worry about it. Picky eaters and constant complaints from other people in your house, the children in your house, can be really difficult. And it creates just this extra work of feeling like you're a short order cook, trying to make sure that everybody eats something. Because, we just don't really seem to live in a world anymore where we can tell our kids, eat what I cooked or go to bed hungry. Like, I can't do that. That's how I grew up. It's like, if you don't eat what's on the table, there's nothing else to eat. Didn't grow up where there was a million things in the cabinet I could just go pick and choose from. Also, I didn't know how to cook, so I couldn't fend for myself. My children know how to fend for themselves. They know how to find something else to eat. But yeah, so, and then your workspace being a mess. If your kitchen's a mess, it just creates more work because it's more things you have to do before you can even start cooking. Or if you're trying to cook in a mess and then like halfway through you find out, oh, that pan is dirty that I need. Shoot. These are the things that can just add to the stress level. And then it makes you think you absolutely hate cooking. You hate dinner time. And that's the kind of person you become, because that's who I was. I thought I really hated dinner. I really thought that I hated cooking. And then I made some mindset shifts. I changed my approach. I started doing things differently, started realizing where like cognitive distortions and limiting beliefs were about this. And I actually enjoy the experience of cooking dinner now. And what you need to do may be different than what I needed to do. So here's some things that can be helpful is making peace with good enough meals. You don't need the pressure of, you don't have to earn your worth by doing extra work. It does not have to be a meal where everyone's going to eat every part of it every single night. Okay. One thing that does help with picky eaters, and I have watched this in experience, and it's not something that we do all of the time right now, but it is a habit I'd like to get back to, is doing family dinners. Like serving family style, where you bring everything to the table and everyone has an empty plate and they kind of just, everything's right in front of them the whole time. Instead of doing buffet where they have to go to the kitchen, pick what they like, and then go sit down, everything's sitting in front of the kids the whole time. And without that pressure of like, oh, you need to eat a vegetable, you need to try this, you'll like it if you try it. You just don't give them the pressure. It's just there in front of them the whole time. Over time, they become more likely to try new things because it's just sitting there in front of them the whole time. And they're like, oh, maybe I will try it. I mean, everyone else has it on their plate. That is one thing that's super beneficial, especially like what I've read is like if your kids are like autistic and stuff, being a picky eater that way, that can be, or if they have like I don't remember what the eating disorders are. There's like an eating disorder that like makes them really picky eaters because of like the texture and like anxiety around eating. And from what I had read, family style dinners seem to be like one of the highly recommended things to do. So maybe try that. And then planning simple low maintenance meals, doing like theme nights, doing batch cooking where you can cook like all your vegetables or all your rice in like multiple days. It really depends what you and your family enjoy eating. So that's going to be something that's got to flex and shift. But being prepared, like having that meal plan ahead of time and not being afraid to like repeat meals, right? And then also like getting your kids involved can be super helpful. Even like, because sometimes like kids are more willing to try something that they had a hand in cooking. Like if they watch it get made, they're less afraid of it. Sometimes they'll be awesome helping you cook, and then they'll still be like, no, I'd rather have cereal. Like, you can't help it. But it's getting them used to it, kind of desensitizing them to the fear of it being the unknown. That can be super helpful. And then also just letting go of the guilt around convenience foods, shortcuts, and repeating meals. Like, it's okay to cook spaghetti twice a week. It's okay to like have 1 week of meals and then rotating that every week. Like every Monday night we do the same thing. Every Tuesday night we do the same thing. Like that's okay to do. And then just change it up whenever you feel like it, like on a whim, when it's exciting too and it's spontaneous too. Um, those are some things that can be super helpful. Um, so then there's a lot of ways of making dinner easier. Like using rotisserie chicken. Again, that's the shortcuts. Like take shortcuts. Use a rotisserie chicken and make easy meals from just that's already cooked. Buy pre-cooked meats or pre-batch cook it yourself. It's okay to like cook up 5 pounds of ground beef on Sunday nights and then use that for the next 3 nights. Like that's fine to do too. Doing dump and go meals, like whatever has like a minimum effort with a maximum payoff, go for that. Using your Traeger or Blackstone for quick, tasty meals is something that keeps getting recommended to me. Like whenever I'm on Pinterest and I'm looking for like easy dinners, or if I'm Googling like how to make dinner time easier, trying to do research for helping people outside of just what helped me, that keeps coming up. But to me, using a Traeger and Blackstone is only easier because if I want a Traeger or Blackstone meal, my husband will cook. So it's way easier for me because he just cooks that night then. Um, I'll make a salad to go with it or a pasta or something. Doing pre-prepared ingredient services. This is something that has like really helped me. Really, really. I think this is what has changed a lot of my relationship with cooking is ordering from Every Plate and HelloFresh. Because the way they write their recipe cards is different from like any recipe you look up online or read out of a like cookbook. It's set up to like 6 different steps with pictures and they bold different words and stuff. Like I caught myself using a recipe that was printed out and I went and I just highlighted the key words that were really important to me, like a cup of water, add to meat, like whatever, like reading a paragraph was too much for me and I had to highlight pieces of it and I realized this is just my brain working differently. I read recipes different. And my husband hates the recipe cards that come with HelloFresh or Every Plate. He hates them. He gets lost in them and gets really confused by them. Because it kind of has you bounce around sometimes. But I'm like, I think it's so much easier. It's so much easier to me to do like one thing at a time. So anyways, to each his own. You've got to figure out what works for you and do what works for you. But just changing the approach of how I cooked dinner, knowing exactly what ingredients I needed ahead of time, having them pre-portioned, pre-measured, knowing exactly which pans I was going to need and having those cleaned and set out where they need to be ahead of time, that has changed the way I cook, and it has made cooking easier and less stressful on me, like the actual physical cooking piece of it. Okay. And then keeping staples on hand, like having freezer and pantry meals that you could just whip out anytime and be like, oh, well, I always have ground beef in the freezer. I've always got, ragu or tomato sauce. I've always got noodles. Like I can always throw together spaghetti. That's something I can throw together anytime. And if I've got fresh veggies on hand, I can add them. Otherwise, like canned veggies and frozen veggies can be tossed in. Or a salad kit. Having salad kits makes adding, greens to the side of any meal super easy for us. And those are just sort of some of the new habits we've gotten into that have made dinner way less stressful to decide what to do. And then giving yourself grace. That is a big one. Some nights can be cereal nights. Some nights are leftover nights. Some nights you can just pull something frozen out of the freezer. Like we found a few meals that we really like that are just like dump. Like it's just already in a bag. You dump it in the skillet and you cook it or you microwave it. Chicken nuggets in the salad kit are totally fine sometimes. Like go ahead and do that. Um, and then what's really helped me to enjoy the experience, because this all made it easier, but I still didn't enjoy the experience until I started making it like a peaceful ritual. So we started dimming the lights in the house in the evenings. We started making this transition into peace, and I started always playing like Taylor Swift's Folklore or Evermore album or something similar. Sometimes I'll play something different that'll come to mind, but as a general like default go-to, I'm like, Alexa, play Shuffle Folklore by Taylor Swift, please. And it just sets this vibe of chill. I'll brew myself a cup of tea or I'll have like a late night coffee. Um, and I'll let it be something peaceful. The kids will be in the other room playing video games or, finishing up schoolwork at the table that they don't need me for, like just doing some art projects or something. They will all be doing something low maintenance, or sometimes they'll like go out to the shop with their dad if he's home already. And it's just, I turn it into a peaceful time, and I made it this sacred kind of experience where I enjoyed what I'm doing. And the kitchen doesn't have to be completely clean, but I will clean off the whole island, even if it means that one of the sinks is full. I do have that blessing of having 2 sinks in my kitchen, which has really changed and altered this, is moving into this new house with a better kitchen has really elevated the experience of cooking dinner. Because my old kitchen kind of really sucked, and it was cold and the floor was really hard, and it was a separate room from the house, like isolated, not like separate, peaceful. So yeah, sometimes there's just out of the box things you have to think of that are like, that's what's holding me back. That's what's making dinner time suck. Find what the problem is so you can solve it. Let go of these expectations of having it all be perfect. Let go of like, it has to be a varied menu. It doesn't. It can be so simple. You can cook the same thing every night. Like if you don't enjoy cooking, don't do an elaborate meal. Take as many shortcuts as you can if it's not what energizes you and brings you peace. Like, how are you going to feel after you've cooked dinner? Are you going to be like in that place to be your best self, your best mother and wife self? Are you going to be fun to be around after dinner, or is this going to put you in a really bad mood? Because the way you interact with those in your house, the way you feel about dinner, and the way you feel after dinner is what is really going to make that impact with those around you. That's what your kids are going to remember. That's who your husband gets to experience, is who you are after dinner. So don't go doing things that put yourself in a bad mood. Like, figure out what's important. All right. Cooking doesn't have to be miserable. It can be simplified. It can be enjoyed. And this is coming from me. Like, if I can enjoy cooking dinner, there is nothing that should be able to hold you back from having the same shift in experience. So your family won't remember every meal, but they'll remember how you made them feel. So don't wear yourself so thin that you snap. And so I encourage you to try just one small change this week. Find one way to make dinner simpler, easier, more peaceful, more enjoyable. And honestly, it really helps. Bonus, like, cook things that you want to eat. Cook things that feel just so indulgent to you. Even if it means like having some ready, dessert, like pick up like a small cake from the bakery at the grocery store. Like find something that's just kind of decadent and special, and it doesn't have to be any extra work from you. Some kind of a reward for afterwards that you can look forward to, even if you can't like work anything into the menu that you're really looking forward to. Okay, friend, I love you so much. I will talk to you again next time.